not move forward?
Yes, he is on his way.
Tonight, we're going through a number of issues that you all had identified as primary concerns back in December as we set the agendas for work sessions for January, February, and for March. The first issue is code enforcement expansions in reference to front porches, which has been an issue that you all brought up. Staff has spent significant time working with Mr. Bateman on this issue to come up with some options for you all to consider. And with that, David Bill, I think, is prepared to begin a brief but hopefully informative presentation.
Thank you, Harold. Evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Tonight, we're just going to have a discussion with this presentation. Hopefully, it's going to help us address some of the things that have been brought up over the past few years about front porches. Now, on this first slide, you'll see what most would consider to be an ideal porch. And the next is more indicative of some of the things we deal with here in Burlington. And this is in Burlington, as all the rest of the pictures are, somewhere in town. It's blocked out all identifying information from you. But it's still something that we have to address. Now, in our current code of ordinances, there's two sections that could possibly address front porches as far as cleanup. The first one is section 22.1, deemed unlawful for the owner or occupant of any lot or parcel of land in the city to permit to exist in any such lot or parcel of land any condition which may be declared to be noxious, detrimental to health, or to constitute a nuisance. That's got a little leeway there. So the next thing that we would turn to for possible enforcement would be section 22.2, which is enumeration. And this is a little bit more defined on what we use, and this is what we use daily when we're dealing with overgrown lots and trash in someone's yard there. So it shows you what conditions can exist and can be in violation. But if we'll look at these items 1 through 8 and then compare back to the picture that we showed you, very few of them are going to be applicable in this situation. Any growth of weeds or other vegetation, well, not on that porch. Any accumulation of animal or vegetable matter that's offensive by virtue of strong odor, vapor, etc. Not on that particular porch. Any open place of concentration of combustible items such as mattresses, boxes, paper, automobile parts, tires, tubes, garbage, trash, refuse, and on and on. Not necessarily on that porch. There were a number of items on that porch, but they did not meet the criteria of section 3. So you go to 4, an open place, collection of garbage, food waste, animal waste, other rotten material. Not necessarily. 5, hides. No. 6, any furniture, appliances, or metal products of any kind or nature. And here's the key, openly kept that have jagged edges of metal or glass for areas of confinement. Not necessarily. Number 7, condition that blocks a waterway. Not in this case. So the part of this ordinance that could be applicable here is 22-2, number 8. Any other condition of a property that's considered dangerous, offensive, or obtrusive to neighboring property. And that's something that we have to be comfortable hanging our hat on before we go out and decide to do enforcement over there. But if you read down the following paragraph there, for purposes of enforcement of the section, open place is defined as an area of property or portion that is open, including building openings of residential dwelling units, and it does specify porches. So we do have the authority to make enforcement if we're comfortable with this. And again, it says if it's exposed to public view there, which again, porches generally are. Another example of a porch here in town, and now I want to give you 3 options that staff has come up working with Mr. Bateman on how we can possibly address front porches in their cleanups. The first one is to use our current code of ordinance, our existing 22-2.8, and that small section there, any other condition of a property that's considered dangerous, offensive, or obtrusive to neighboring properties. Now, how we would enforce this is we'd get the complaint, either through CBC or the code enforcement officer would find it. They'll check out if the violation exists. The property owner or the renter would have 10 days from the date posted on the property to correct the violation. After 10 days, the code enforcement officer re-inspects. If they've made significant progress but still need some more time, they'll work with them. The whole point of this option number 1 is voluntary compliance by the citizens here. They'll re-inspect that property, and they'll even coordinate with Public Works and say, hey folks, If you can get these materials off your porch and to the curb, we'll pick them up for you for free. This particular option doesn't involve fines. It doesn't involve penalties. It is, again, voluntary compliance is what we're after here. But if that voluntary compliance ends, or if no compliance happens, then it is possible that a criminal citation could be issued in this matter based on 22-8 and 22-2.8, and then it would be up to the court to consider this case and make a ruling on it. That's with no compliance or a stop of compliance. If we move on, we'll see another example of porches around town. We have option 2, which is largely the same as option 1. However, the difference here is if the violation persists, the city won't get a contractor to abate this nuisance. They will collect the items on the porch. They'll store them in a city-approved facility, which is secured. The items will be inventoried and kept separate from other cases, much like when items are found in a confiscated vehicle. And after a certain time period, the items will be disposed of as surplus property for the city. This one will come with a cost. Any cost related to the nuisance abatement, to the contractor cleanup, to the storage, to the disposal of the property, would be billed to the property owner, and the amount of the bill would be a lien on the property if unpaid. That's the second option. And these kind of go from low impact, medium impact to larger impact. So the third option that we're looking at would be the highest impact, and this would actually be a proposed ordinance addition. We would propose to put this in section 22-2.8, and it would be titled Use of Unenclosed Porch as Storage Area. And this is language that Mr. Bateman and I have come up after surveying similar situations throughout the state and ordinances as they may exist. And it will state, it shall be unlawful for any person owning, occupying, or controlling any residential dwelling to use or permit to be used any unenclosed porch exposed to a public street or highway as a storage area or collection place for. And this actually enumerates what is not allowed. A, you'll see boxes, appliances, furniture, tools, equipment, junk, garbage, old, worn out, broken, discarded machinery, equipment, cans, containers, cardboard containers, household goods. Similar condition that increases the likelihood of a fire, may conceal dangerous conditions, may be a breeding place or habitat for mice, rats, or other pests, or create an unattractive condition or visually blighted property. There's a B section to this option as well, and this is something that is not currently addressed. The placement, storage, or use of upholstered sofas, couches, chairs, or other indoor-type furniture, appliances, seats removed from motor vehicles, or other furniture not intended for outdoor use by the manufacturer. And C, if the renter or owner of the property is found in violation of Part A or B above, the violation is not remedied within 15 days, then the renter or owner of the property shall be subject to criminal citation.
How do you, interrupt you, how do you define junk?
A lot of this is largely going to be subjective. It's going to be up to the code enforcement officer. They will be trained largely as they are in dealing with junk in yards now. And it's going to be with the other items in mind. The other items like discarded machinery, equipment, garbage, furniture, thing that might provide a habitat for a pest or standing water for mosquitoes and things of that nature there. Now, this is a decent looking house. This is a house in Burlington, but there's a violation on the porch if that new ordinance is enacted, and that would be furniture on the porch that's not intended for outdoor use. Proposed enforcement of option 3, when the complaint comes in, violation is proven to exist, code enforcement officer would gather information, build that case, they'd send notices to the owner of record and or the renters, depending on who's occupying the house, by our standard practice of regular registered mail. The owner or the renter would have 10 days from the posting date to correct the violation. Code enforcement officer would re-inspect that property. They would take updated pictures. If it's not clear, they'll give an additional 5 days if needed for the property. If violation were to continue, that couch is not removed, or whatever the matter may be, criminal citation would be served for violation of 22-2.8, and then it would be up to the court to consider this ruling. Now, this one would come with a cost, and that would be court costs. If someone is pushed to court, then there's a minimum $185 court cost that's going to be charged to that person regardless of what the judge decides that they need to do, whether they give them time to clean it up, an extension, or whether they fine them, or if they give them a suspended sentence, or if they dismiss the case. Regardless, the person would be on the hook for $185. support cost. So all that being said, again, another example of a nice yard, a nice house that would be in violation of that new language. Staff's recommendation would be go to option one, the first one that we saw. Use our existing ordinances. Try and go with section, item 8 under 22-2. Try and get the owner compliance on here. Give them an opportunity to clean it up themselves. Give them assistance in disposing of this property, working with Public Works, hauling this stuff away for them. No charge in this matter, unless they don't follow through or they don't cooperate at all. Then we would have the option of issuing a criminal citation. And that would be done with the code enforcement officer going to the magistrate's office, swearing out a warrant, the warrant served by the police department, and then it would be the code enforcement officer to back this up in court. So these are just discussion items, which, like I said, go from, easy, a little more difficult, and the most, the maximum that could be done. And we can do a combination of any of these, or whatever council wants to do to guide us in the enforcement of front porches.
Why complaint driven?
Just because of the nature of our work. Code enforcement, like most nuisances within the city, regardless of which department, is complaint driven. Staff works off of complaints. It comes through CBCs. They also deal with front yards, and grass. They also deal with minimum housing issues. They also deal with other nuisances within the city. Quite frankly, we don't have the staff and resources to dedicate to consistent enforcement on this. So what happens when a call comes in through CBC, we'll send an officer out there. If there is a violation, then they're duty bound to address it.
Charles, you want to kind of talk about from the legal side some of these variables here?
Yeah, and thank you, Harold. We struggle because there are obviously legal implications to removing property from somebody's porch. And we are loath to go out and have a contract to clean off the man's property and take it to a holding facility and maybe dispose of. Even if we inventory after we take it off, it's always such an intrusion to do that. That's why, in our opinion, we better be served by using the criminal summary citation and really try to get as much voluntary compliance as we can. Again, David and I spent a considerable amount of time looking at various ways to address this. In our opinion, option number 1 will solve a good part of the problem without having to take necessary steps. We're obviously reticent to consider recommending council that you make a posted version of all four porches. That has an impact that probably has unintended consequences when we get down to the enforcement of it. As you saw by the slides, a couple of places that were had a council report were not bad looking, were nothing to the blind people's living. Most of us had. If it was coupled with accumulation of others, then it might be a blight, and we still use option number 1 to address all of it. That's our feeling. We really are trying to take a path, a recommended path to you to take, which is has a decent shot at success in most cases with the least impact on intruding on citizens' rights.
Questions, comments from council?
We've been receiving a lot of calls on CBC from that.
I would not say a large number of calls. This is an item that comes up with almost any community meeting that we've had over the past 5 or 6 years. There are some concerned citizen groups who would like to see some improvements in their neighborhood, and we can't say we disagree with you. But as far as a number of calls, it's just a fraction of the overall calls that we get. I would say just by a windshield survey of one of the code enforcement officers that we did in the city about 2 months ago, there's probably a little less than 3 dozen that we found.
I feel like as soon as it hits the newspapers, then CBC calls will go up because you're doing them anonymously, and then your next door neighbor, you're going to get hit with it.
Very possible. Every time there's any kind of press, good, bad, or otherwise, the CBC calls increase.
This particular thing is good for them. I think.
Charles, talk to us a little bit about it. We can take somebody's property off that porch.
Well, number one is that we have a pretty nebulous definition of what constitutes a nuisance, and it's a subjective thing. When you take it off, you're entering in their property, removing items of unknown value, certainly, we do the houses and have them demolished. We have appraisals and it's a complex and expensive process. If I go take a box of trash off somebody's house, the first thing that's gonna happen is the bag of will was in the box and you destroyed it, or the bag of paper is, of an antique nature worth thousands of dollars. There's a lot of civil liability and things like that. It needs to be approached with caution, in our opinion.
Well, it appears to me, I would agree with David, even though we don't get a lot of CBC complaints, every community meeting or every community focus group, this is what comes up. And I think that's obviously what stimulated the discussion to try to address some of these things, especially in certain neighborhoods. I'm always concerned if we make amendments. I know we've got amendments for ordinances that are, we've got some of 30 and 40 amendments to them. And anytime you make an amendment, you're gonna have some unintended consequences, because you just can't think through every possible thing. The second thing that's important to me is respecting the property rights of the property owner. And it looks like the existing ordinance gives us the leeway to at least venture down the path, ask for voluntary compliance, which I think would be in everybody's best interest. We're offering to unilaterally assist in getting rid of the debris or whatever it is, no charge. That would be the path of least resistance without making a lot of substantive changes and hopefully getting some of these areas cleaned up.
So what will be the next step, David?
If you were to choose option one, there's no official action needed from council, just an understanding and a directive that this is what you would like code enforcement to start addressing. And we would do this with the hope of voluntary compliance, but with the understanding that in the most severe cases of uncooperation, that they could very well go to court.
The most, what we would deem to be the most egregious circumstance, if we didn't have a CBC complaint, would we elect to have a code enforcement officer go ahead and initiate it at that one time? Is that what you were looking for before?
Well, code enforcement officers can address any violation within the city without a complaint. I mean, it's up to their purview, their discretion for that. So
I guess knowing that we've got limited resources, we rely on our most ordinance to be complaint driven. The enforcement of, I guess in the most egregious cases, I think what the mayor was referring to earlier is why do we wait for a complaint in the most egregious cases? Why don't we go ahead and initiate an enforcement officer to do that?
we could. We have that inventory of almost 3 dozen porches from our windshield survey that we could go ahead and address. But to date, we have not, because the understanding of this particular part of the ordinance hasn't been very clear.
Any comments from council? My suggestion would be to let's move forward and start the process, because I'm one person. Anyone else?
No, I would agree under the option that's created there. I think that is the definitive path to at least start addressing the subject.
All right. Let's move forward.
Yes, sir.
With option one.
Option one.
There, I has to be excused, and I'll be back, but there's another meeting in between, so.
Are we cutting your payoff right now before we go?
Stay walk out the door.
Okay, but thank you, Charles. We'll look forward to seeing you back. Harold.
David, you want to do demolition?
Sure. Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor and Council, we bring before you tonight a house for demolition consideration. This property at 916 Rainey Street was condemned by the city on February 27th of last year, 2013. The property is listed in ownership by Mr. Oscar M. Pacheco and is a foreclosure from Bank of America. The house was given an order for demolition by the Housing Commission at the November 26th meeting of 2013. appraisal on this property was made, the tax value was estimated to be $16,700, and that's more than 60% of the Alamance County Tax Department's value of $68,271. It should be noted that there was some unpermitted work which was done to this house after the order of demolition was given in November. This work was evidently directed by Safeguard Properties on behalf of Bank of America, and a stop work order was issued by the city's inspection department on January 17th of this year, 2014. Safeguard Properties was contacted, and they were provided with copies of the order of demolition. They were provided with a copy of the stop work order. There have been no subsequent work attempts at this address since. The case was reviewed with Mr. Bateman, who found no procedural defects in the matter, and staff recommends approval of the demolition ordinance. And by approving the demolition ordinance on this property, it will allow the city to have the house removed, have the lot cleaned up, and allow a tax lien placed on the property so the city might recoup some of the money spent on this case.
Let me see the original picture.
Of the front of the house?
I'm sorry,
Sure,
first.
sure.
Is there a fire in this house?
There is evidence of a fire. That's not why we got the call. There's evidence in the attic of some charred timbers, and there's no record of permits for work being completed in past years.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Recommendation?
Council's in favor of this, we could add this on to the agenda tomorrow night.
Consent.
All the necessary
Yeah.
notifications and everything, I'm in agreement.
All right. Thank you, Thank you, David.
Yes, sir.
Gentlemen, back in a previous work session, maybe I believe October, we had discussions concerning our water and sewer utility policy, especially in areas where outside the city, where there are existing lines in place. And at that time, it was asked that we go back and do a thorough inventory of the sites, potentially how that may have occurred over the years. This goes back literally 35 to 40 years. But I think we've come with GIS, which gives us an awful lot of ability to identify these sites. I think we have some explanation on where lines are put in and why, using federal funds or wherever it may be, or actually subdivision development, what it might be. But Nolan, you go ahead and give us that information so we know what to do.
Thank you, Harold. As you recall, at the September meeting, we did have 4 requests for utility connections at that meeting. And one of those was approved the following night at council, so we still have 3 that are pending, but our direction was that, to consider those, we needed additional information brought forth. So staff has spent some time analyzing where lines are, what their intended uses were for, and things of that nature. So that's what I'm going to try to show you graphically here to kind of paint a picture of and I'm going to focus on the northern section of town because that's primarily where most of the utility accounts that are outside the city are located. So let me first bring in the ETJ to bring in some perspective. And then here, I'm just going to focus on water lines at first, but here are the water lines that extend outside of our city limits into the ETJ. The green ones that you see here are water lines that were put in by developers to feed subdivisions. And the magenta ones are ones that were either done by the county or CDBG, and primarily CDBG. And the blue ones were city or some type of partnership driven endeavor. So let me bring in the subdivisions so you can see those green lines are feeding various subdivisions that were approved by council over the years. In addition to that, here are the accounts that we have for utilities outside the city currently. And as you can see, these are just the ones you see in pink are just the ones that were feeding off of the CDBG or county lines. So I think when we finally got through all this information, it kind of drew a picture to us that basically what we're dealing with is about 90% or so of the utility accounts that we have outside the city limits are an impact of either approved subdivisions and lines that were extended by developers to those subdivisions, or folks who are connected to CDBG or certainly there's some, onesie-twosie accounts out there as well. There's a few commercial accounts as well, for utilities, but that's the majority of kind of what we came out of. I do have more information, but I think this was the picture that staff felt like, kind of came to us. And getting back to, processing the requests, that were before us, we met with Charles, and Charles spent a good bit of time looking at, a procedural policy, which was in your packets. And so I wanted to talk about that briefly, unless you guys want to get into some of this information, more details on the screen. So let me go ahead and talk about the policy then. Again, we worked with Charles on this. And so this is a proposed policy. It doesn't require any changes to our existing ordinance. The existing ordinance is section 37-30, which is the annexation policy for water and sewer connections. And it basically, this policy is a procedure that would define how we would function out of that existing ordinance. The goal would be to improve the process for outside utility requests that are made by single family or duplex units. So just single family or duplex. And this would help expedite services when they're needed, and also encourage new customers from a business and customer relations perspective. One of the things we found when we looked at, we actually have about 1,800 accounts outside the city limits, which makes up about 10% of our total residential utility accounts. And considering they're paying double rates, we're looking at somewhere probably between just roughly 15-20% of residential utility revenues. I'm not counting commercial. Okay, so, but this helps expedite those things and looks at things from a business perspective. Essentially, what the policy does is it provides staff the ability to approve utility requests only for single-family and duplex units, and those that are on existing lines. And we would still bring those annexation petitions to council for consideration. It would not apply to any other type of request, including any type of extension of any main lines. Those requests would have to be brought to council for approval. It wouldn't involve any other multifamily structures or mobile home parks or multi-tenant uses, subdivisions, commercial or institutional or industrial uses. It's clearly set just for the small requests that come in where it's a single family or duplex connection. So that's the information we wanted to bring back to you and propose a policy to help kind of expedite some of these small requests going forward. Certainly open for any discussion or questions.
So anything in the ETJ that there's water in front of somebody's house, but they own city water right now, you guys want to go ahead and not bring it to council, go ahead.
Water and sewer for single family or duplex units.
Yeah.
Based on what they'll know, they've got to agree though, that we have prepared information that would come to you all at later time if you want to annex them or not. You still have the option to annex them if you wish.
We have to bring that request to you because we have to comply with the ordinance.
Yeah.
You're talking about where they could just tap on for the existing?
Existing lines.
Okay, we're not talking about giving authority for infrastructure. Okay.
Questions or comments for Nolan?
I have a question there. You mentioned that it wouldn't require changing the ordinance. It certainly seems to be an exception. I don't know why. What I'm saying is I disagree with that position.
Okay.
I think you will have to make an exception in the ordinance. And I would like to think about it. I don't know what your timeline is or where you want to move forward with it.
You're saying in the existing ordinance it would be an exception to that?
Yeah, you have to show an exception because, let's say, well, I don't know, let's say the ordinance, anybody can get to that and read it, and if somebody's reading the ordinance, would think they have to go
pressing matter here, the request that came before us in the past in September. At the time, they said it wasn't an urgent nature. I don't know if we've heard back. I don't remember from Daniel saying that he had heard back from him, but they're waiting. But I guess the idea is you wouldn't want to wait too long, or you don't have to wait for this policy or a potential ordinance revision to act on their request. That's something that could be brought forward.
About a week, at maybe the first council meeting in March, just prepare or go through the process of preparing something to the ordinance that the council would consider that would allow this to go forward as presented by Nolan. Then council would consider it then, and if you wish to vote forward or not, we can go from there. Is that fair enough, Bob?
I would like to do that.
Okay, just let on.
I understand what Bob was saying, it makes sense after he explained it, but I also agree that if we could expedite the process and make it so, more most important, I mean, even though the end user needs simplification, I think staff needs simplification, so.
Is that first meeting in March good with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go with that then. All right. Sheriff Johnson had, as you may be aware, has been talking about a training facility for, I think, police and fire in the whole county. And he had sent some information over to both our police chief and our fire chief. And I really felt like it was, staff didn't have the authority to make a commitment on behalf of the council. So I think our fire chief, and I know our police chief has met with somebody, either Sheriff Johnson, representative of his staff, concerning an ideal overall view of what they're attempting to do. Sheriff Johnson is here to make a presentation. Both Chief Smythe and Chief Smith is here also to answer any questions what I involved and possibly might be. So with that, Sheriff Johnson.
Thank you. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here before the council and the people here today. Appreciate what y'all doing for the city of Burlington, and it's so good to come in a very peaceful meeting. Let me just say that for years, there has been talk among the law enforcement agencies, predominant law enforcement agencies in some of the county fire departments, for a need for a training center for all emergency personnel here in Alamance County. And there's many reasons for that. First of all, we need the training. You've seen all the school shooters, a lot of the major things happening in America today, and we feel like that we need to get a jump on this from happening here and be able to receive the best possible training, and also be able to work together hand in hand when something major happens. We're all in this business together. And over the past 4 or 5 years, there's been a discussion with the law enforcement agency heads with the community college about trying to develop a regional training center for our people, as well as anyone that wants to come from out of county into this particular training center. And when Dr. Gatewood took over as president of the Alamance Community College, certainly things began to move forward. The college is on board. The Chiefs Law Enforcement Executive Committee has met, discussed some of this, and are in agreement for the needs for this particular training center. So I went to some of the county commissioners, the county manager in the county, and asked, is there any places available that we could develop this particular training center? This is something that's not going to be developed overnight. I assure you it's going to have to be developed in stages unless the rain seems to rain dollar bills down. I don't believe that's going to happen. But we do have some private people that has expressed an interest to assist us in this endeavor as far as keeping the cost down, and with the possibility of grants and private involvement in the finances, we feel that we may be able to bring this training center about here in Alamance County. There are 2 sites that's being looked at. One is in the right outside of Swepsonville as one off the Austin Porter Road near the landfill. That particular site at this time looks the best as far as the cost and as far as the safety of anybody surrounding that particular training center. What we have asked is for our chiefs of fire and law enforcement to be able to sign a letter of support to looking into this endeavor. There's nothing on board now about cost to the cities or the county or anything else. Let's just look at this particular endeavor and develop it step by step as we go along. I would like to read the letter that we've asked our law enforcement executives and fire executives to sign to be presented to the county commissioners on the 17th of February at their night meeting. And I'd like to read that at this time. It just reads, Dear Board of Commissioners, the undersigned administrators of Alamance County Emergency Response Agencies would like to overwhelmingly express our support for the development of an Alamance County Regional Emergency Service Training Center in Alamance County. This proposed training facility would be created in cooperation with the Alamance Community College. A unified facility to accommodate the extensive training requirements for law enforcement, fire, and emergency medical services would greatly enhance both the quality and quantity of training. Similar facilities across this great state and nation have proven to be both highly efficient and cost effective. Frequently, higher levels of course study and training can be obtained by virtue of having an appropriate teaching and learning environment which a training center such as this would provide to all emergency personnel in Alamance County. In addition, a centralized location for cross-training of all emergency service personnel provides an excellent value for our county taxpayers. Your consideration of this project is greatly appreciated. Please feel free to contact any of us if we may be of assistance. This letter would be presented to the county commission on the 17th. So far, the only three agencies that have not signed, of course, the fire chief here and your police chief, because, you know, of what Mr. Owens said, and also we've been trying to get up with the Snow County Fire Department chief. He's agreed to sign it. We just got to get with it. It's a great opportunity, I think, for Alamance County. We have, two training centers for emergency personnel, particularly law enforcement, in the Edneyville Justice Academy and the Salemburg Justice Academy. One east, one west. This way, our officers and emergency service personnel could come to class, go home at night, spend the night, save the agencies from having to send people out of state to Edneyville, to Salemburg. The closest driving track that I'm aware of here is the Highway Patrol facility in Raleigh, North Carolina. And talking with a lot of the agency heads, this is one of the biggest concerns is the driving track and teaching our officers and emergency service personnel how to safely operate motor vehicles while responding. What we're looking at is a driving track to be developed, which probably would be the first step in this particular endeavor. A firing range, a firehouse where our firemen could train going in under the conditions of fire and smoke, a fire tower for our fire departments to use, a physical fitness course, and certainly classroom training space that would accommodate all the emergency services. There may be a large law enforcement training classroom, a fire classroom, other emergency service personnel classroom. We find it very difficult in finding classroom space to conduct trainings here. Secondly, a lot of the large-scale trainings that we try to send our people to, specialized training, we've had to go to Washington, D.C., we've had to go to California, we've had to go to Las Vegas, we've had to go to Hawaii, and we can bring, according to the college, we can bring those instructors here a whole lot cheaper than we can send our people and get very, very good specialized training for our emergency service personnel. And let me iterate this.
A lot of good specialized training in Hawaii, isn't it?
Oh, yes, sir, that was some good training out there, but the Department of Justice put it on. But,
How come I never get signed up for anything?
sir, if you want to join emergency services, we can let you try to send you some training. But it's, you know, I think this is going to be important. Alamance County, like I said, the community college is overwhelmingly in support of this endeavor. And they they would actually run the program and be using our instructors. The city has several law enforcement instructors that teach out at the BLET. That program all would be moved to this particular training center. And I'll be honest with you, this has been a need for many years here. And we're coming forward and going to try to develop. And I can tell you right now, I'm one of the best beggars you've ever seen when it comes to finance.
Sheriff, how many different, how many other counties have this something?
Counties, Greensboro has their own fire training center and a partial law enforcement training center. I think Sanford Community College has a small track where we've had to send our people for pit maneuvering, as far as chasing, taking cars out, etc., and driver training. And really, a center like we're talking about, you won't find it around here, I don't think. Winston-Salem has a fire training center, and I think they may run their own academy, but they don't have the facilities like we're talking about. High Point, you know, I think they have their own training academy, but nothing like we're talking about.
Do you envision something like this could be ultimately be pulling in these instructors, or something that the county could actually recoup some money from by making these programs available to other counties and cities?
Absolutely, absolutely. Especially some of these big schools that we're having to send officers out to, and etc. Bring that here. Yes, sir. There could be a charge for them to come in here.
Sure. By us agreeing to sign on to this letter, what is that obligating us to?
Absolutely nothing. Absolutely. It's just saying we support this endeavor to look into building this particular training center. It does not bind the city of Burlington financially or any other way. And if it's somewhere down the road, the city of Burlington say, hey, we don't want to be a part of it, that's fine. You know, we love to have you because we all try to work together. But it does not bind the city to a single thing.
I guess the next question for Chief Smythe and Chief Smith would be, what would we gain out of participating with this in reference to what we currently have right now?
You know, we certainly have a pretty well-tuned system for doing our annual training at our training site. And we do that because it keeps our people very close to the city. So if we have to respond for something, we're able to do that. So I don't know that we would change that up front, but it certainly does give us some good potential for, like he says, the bigger schools and the other invited-in kinds of classes. So day-to-day stuff, probably not much, but on an annual basis, there will certainly be a number of opportunities to increase the specialized training that might be available to our officers. I think the fire department is pretty much the same.
Yeah, we're pretty much the same thing. You know, on a daily basis, we wouldn't probably have the opportunity to send somebody far out of the city, even though technically we're out of the city now, but we could recover very quickly. But it's the specialized things like Sheriff Johnson talked about, where you get really good instructors instead of having to go far away to get these people. It would be a nice facility where these big name people would come in to do training. So it would be specialized, more on a daily basis. The specialized stuff is what we would be looking for, as well as the burn building, maybe trying to utilize that in some way, because we don't have a burn facility to actually burn in.
Any questions for Sheriff Johnson?
Please, if you have them, please ask.
Well, Sheriff, thank you for being here. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much. Does that mean that Chief Smythe and Chief Smith can sign it?
Guys?
I'm okay with it.
Fine.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Sheriff. Appreciate it.
You got a friendly crowd, Sheriff. You got a friendly crowd.
Oh, yeah, I'll see it. It's good to see y'all. Y'all do a lot of good shit.
But yeah, if you want. Yes, sir. Thank you. I'll do what I can stay long. We're going to a break, but then what, I think it's appropriate, we attempted to stay in touch with you guys concerning the sewer break that occurred last week over at the East Plant. Michael and Eric both were here, and Bob, all three. Significant time was spent last week. I'll tell you that particular repair was made. It was finalized on Saturday to the line. We met this afternoon for a fairly considerable period of time, looking at what's next in reference to efforts we need to take to correct some additional issues. As you all may be aware, in this year's budget, we have funded the repair of the full Alamance Creek line, which is in the process of what we will have finished by June. We had long-term, it looked for the next fiscal year, less than a fiscal year to work on the Hall Interceptor line, which actually we have designed part of that. It asked for federal funds back during the Obama administration. We did not meet those qualifications, but we had the design, and we were planning on that update beginning the first part of the fiscal year. This last break, and Michael will show you some pictures, is actually a line leading from a pump station up towards the plant, which at the meeting today, we believe there's certainly an option of combining the interceptor line, which might have to actually be replaced, and potentially lining this particular line where the break occurred, leading from the pump station up towards the plant. So with all that, Michael will kind of give you an overview of what happened, what our efforts have been with Diener in terms of keeping them informed of the situation, where we are now, and probably where we need to go over the next, I'd say 18 months out there. Probably immediate concern in the next 6 months, and then probably a additional replacement of the interceptor line even further away. So, Michael?
All right. If you look on the map here, I'm just going to kind of talk to the map and walk you through it. But this is the East Burlington wastewater treatment plant, hatched out in purple here. And it collects most of the sewage from the railroad tracks northeast, including some of Elon and Gibsonville, and transports it to this facility. So these collection system lines that you see in green are collecting the system from the houses and industry and businesses and transporting it to the treatment plant. And they come into the treatment plant at this location, and there's a pump station there. And it pumps the sewage from there up to equalization basin. I'm going to zoom in on a different map now to the back here in a minute. So the sewage comes in through here, through the pump station. It pumps the sewage from here through this green line, or I'm sorry, through this yellow line, up to the equalization basin. The equalization basin is used to address high flows and kind of equalize the amount of sewage running through the plant. It also, this 30-inch force main also comes and bypasses the equalization basin and goes over here to a splitter box where it starts into the treatment process. It's about a 70-foot elevation difference between here and the pump station. So the only way we can get it up there is by through this 30-inch main, this force main, which is made of cast iron. It was installed when the plant was built back in 57 or 59. 57 pipe, it was installed in 59. To our knowledge, we hadn't had any problems out of it until recently. Friday, the 24th, we had a break at this location. And we went out and worked through the weekend and repaired it. We had an overflow associated with that one also. It was much less because we were still able to divert all the flow into the equalization basin. We turned off the valve in this location. So all the flows came up through the force main and went directly into the basin. And so we limited the amount of overflow on that one. We did the repair, and I put the line back in service, and then we had this second break. And that one, we were not able to isolate, so the only way we could stop it was to turn off the pumps at the pump station, which we had to do because they were getting flooded out by the volume of water coming back on top of them. So,
On top of them meaning who?
on top of the pumps. So the pumps are, it's a 3-story building, the pumps are down in it, and the flow came out of this break and was flowing right back down on top of it. And it's filling up that whole area. And you can see up here, there's a wall. So that wall is outside here. So everything was ponding up inside of that. So the only way to save the pumps was to turn it off. And so when we turned it off, we started backing up in the collection system with the sanitary sewer, and it was overflowing through the manholes.
And Michael, that is the Hall River intersection line we was talking about, the green line.
Correct.
It was backing up in.
Let's see where my stuff goes. So the Hall River interceptor, and I have another map on here that shows it a little better. Is a 42-inch corrugated metal pipe, and I'm not sure of its installation date, but it would have been right around the same time because this is what feeds the plant. So I think it was in the 50s when it was actually installed. And they no longer allow corrugated metal in sanitary sewer systems. In the 60s, they prohibited it. So we don't have much of it in our system. This just happens to be one of our important lines in this corrugated metal. The plant is here. The Hall River interceptor is what we call that 42-inch line. It runs along the Hall River all the way up to Grand Hotel Road. And it's a 42-inch from that point back to the plant. And we have a lot of collection lines that tie into that. So it transports, on average, 4.5, 5 million gallons a day. Somewhere in here. Let me get back here. So we had the break, and we started backing up water. It started backing up out of these manholes, the ones that I'm pointing to that have the white lines, and also out of these manholes back here, which is a 15-inch sewer line. It just happens to be a little lower elevation than some of the rest of it. We immediately, when Darren called me from the plant, he's the plant operator, he called me at 6:20, and of course, threw on my boots and took off. On my ride over to the plant, I called Godwin Pumps, and had them start mobilizing pumps to bring out to try and eliminate the overflow. They had 2 8-inch pumps on the yard, which are really big pumps. I don't know if you can tell it here. There's a car, that's one of the pumps. So it's the size of a car. Anyway, they brought 2 of those out, and we strung up the pipe, and we had one online by 11 p.m., and we had the second one online at about 1 o'clock. And that, unfortunately, the water backed up so much that the pumps couldn't keep up with it and eliminate the overflow. So they had to mobilize a 16-inch pump to come in as well, which they happen to have in Raleigh. The problem was they had to get the crew from Wilmington, they had to get the pipe, they had to get it put on trucks, they had to have it delivered the next day. So they weren't able to mobilize it immediately. And then we had snow and ice, which made things even more difficult for us. But they brought that pump out. Now, with these 2 8-inch pumps, we did drastically reduce the amount of overflow. We think by having 8-inch pumps installed, we probably kept about 5.5 million gallons from overflowing and put it through the plant. So they brought the 16-inch pump out. They worked through the night on it. Had some equipment problems, and they had to call off for the night and crank back up the next morning and get back into it. And we got the pump online at 2:25 on Wednesday. So the overflow started at 6:20 on Monday. At 2:25 on Wednesday, we had the 16-inch pump online. At 3:40, we stopped overflowing. So it drew down the water, we stopped overflowing. Throughout this entire event, in fact, at 7, a little after 7 o'clock, I called Diener on Monday. So it was, within an hour of me even knowing about it, and notified Diener that we had this issue going on, that potentially millions of gallons could get to the river. And so they notified Pittsburgh, who's a downstream water provider, and Tom Boyd called me. He's the Raleigh guy that's over water supply, and he called me about 11 o'clock. Yeah, he's out of Raleigh. Yeah. Tom Boyd's out of Raleigh, right? Well, he was in. What? Is he listening? Okay. Okay. Well, he called me. He said he notified Pittsburgh. They were aware of it now, and they were going to be looking out for any negative impacts, which, to our knowledge, they did not notify or notice any yet. Let's see, where am I? Go. We, no, I don't know what I did. Okay. We checked this bridge crossing, and we checked 3 others all the way down to the interstate, looking for any negative impacts, and we didn't see any negative impacts, like as far as environmental impacts. In fact, you couldn't even see from this bridge, you couldn't even see that there was a wastewater flow in the river.
So where did it actually discharge into the river?
It discharged from here to here. All along that area.
Those are manholes.
So those are manholes.
Up and down that.
Yeah, so the circles right there are hard to see, those are manholes.
Right.
And so it's discharging through those manholes and into the river, because this is right along the river.
Okay.
The flow backed up and came off the top of the
Right.
In fact, you can't see it here, but the river's in the background of that picture. So, anyway, we were able to eliminate the overflow. We did lose 3.5 million gallons, but we were reacting as quickly and efficiently as we possibly could, given the circumstances. So, we've done the repair, we completed the repair on Saturday. The repair consisted of sleeving in a new section of pipe. That's a 30-inch pipe, and that's a sleeve on the end to tie it into the existing one. And it was about a 12-foot section, which is equivalent to about what we had to go through also. We are working on the pump station now, trying to get it cleaned up and operational. Of course, it was flooded out, so we have to get all of that in working order before we can turn the water back on. We hope by Wednesday maybe to get the pumps up and running, to test this line a little bit more, to make sure it's okay, no other problems that we are aware of. We did camera whenever we had this opened up. We cameraed up the line and down the line and didn't see anything with the camera. We could only take it to this point though, because if there's a bend in the line, we couldn't take it beyond the bend. But what we investigated looked okay. While we're getting back online, we're going to keep the 16-inch pump in service or active on site, so we can turn it on if we need it. If we have some sort of issue, and we're going to get it up and running again. Now, one of the things we're going to have to try to address in the future is this is a 59 vintage pipe, so it's 65 years old, and we need to look at making sure that the integrity of that pipe is in good shape, which that can be done by lining that pipe. I've talked to several lining companies, and they bring in a structural liner, it's like a socket, and you blow the socket into the line, and you expand it out, and it hardens with an epoxy, and it's a structural lining. And so that's one of the options for that, and we're investigating whether or not that would be a good option for us. We're also investigating a needing to look closely at, replacing this section of line. The purple that you see here, it's about 3,500 feet of the Haw River Interceptor, and we've already done the design on it. We did the design back when there was stimulus money. We tried to get stimulus money, and we didn't quite qualify, ironically, because we did not have the SSOs on it. So So, that's about 3,500 feet, and we have it designed, we're getting together a bid package and estimates on what it would take funding wise. And we will probably be requesting some of that moving forward. Maybe even rolling these two projects in together.
What, any type of communication with Diener in reference to this week?
We were on the phone with them constantly. I talked to them at least 3 times every day. They didn't come out to the site until Thursday. At that point, they said they kind of wanted to stay out of our way while we were getting the bypass in place. They want to distract us from the job at hand, which is eliminating overflow. But I spoke with Corey Basinger, Jeannie Grasnack, and Ron Boone, each separately, and Tom Boyd as well. They're all out in the same office.
Do you anticipate a fine?
Historically, I think the fines have followed against this size. And yeah, certainly in talking with Corey, they'll probably follow up with some sort of intent, which will give us an opportunity to document and show our case and our response. And they take that into consideration before they actually move to the fining stage.
Other than these 2 instances right here, have we had any notice that the line was going bad?
No.
Okay,
not.
so you're right here in the middle of a temperature drop, significant temperature. Were either one of those related to the temperature drop?
We are not certain, Dave. We have, the pipe when it was installed, they had to blast to install the pipe. And typically when you install a pipe, if you're getting down on a rock or even in a trench, you're gonna put a bedding of stone. It's 57 stone, which is like using a driveway. It's like gravel. So you put a bed of gravel, put 6 inches or foot deep, and that gives some cushion for the pipe. This one is laid directly on granite rock. And so if there's a hard part, and whenever there's any type of movement, and it can push into the pipe and cause that. So during freeze thaw, you may get some of that. And so we can't eliminate that certainly can't eliminate that as part of the possibility.
But if you put that sleeve in there.
Because, and it was ironic, I mean, it was very, very cold. I mean,
Is it the second thing there too, is that, with the upgrade to the plants, the variable pumping processes in terms of pumps going on and off is something we need to take a look at too, as a result of the upgrade down there. So, while lining here is really more viable, is that, go back in that first picture, Michael, there's a lot of other things around out there. So if we had to replace that line, one coming in from the pump station, we would probably have to blast because of rock, and I think that can create a number of issues for us. So that's why the lining on that particular one becomes really much more viable option. Now, the replacement up on Olive Interceptor, that remains to be seen. That's whether that can be the pipe in the present area itself can be taken out and replaced, or would have to be a parallel line run there. But that's a little too early to tell on that site.
and what we've designed on that one is from this point down to the plant, which just so happens to be where we were having overflow. Now that won't eliminate overflow if something like this happens, and it's gonna, the sewage has to go somewhere.
And as part of the replacement of the Hot River Interceptor line, we would have to set up a bypass pumping system to capture the flow and send it to the equalization basin. So if we are gonna line or replace the plant line that just failed, now would be the time to do it, because we can make use of that same bypass pump rather than having a second setup, so there'll be some cost avoidance.
Yeah, so what you would do is you would set up a bypass at this location, and it pumps all the way down the outfall to the equalization basin. And it bypasses our pumping network.
Is that where you pump from this break, when you set up the 2-inch bypass, you pump the equalization basin in?
We are, leave this up on that. We are sitting right here
Right.
and pumping to the equalization basin.
Yeah.
What are the size of the 4 pumps that you have in, permanent pumps that are there?
We have 6 permanent pumps in place, and the
4 500 horsepower and 2 new 150 horsepower. And 250.
We're required, our permitted capacity plant is 12 million gallons per day. We're required by DENR to have enough plant capacity to pump 2.5 times the permitted capacity, so we have to have capacity to pump 30 million gallons a day. So that's why we have so many pumps.
We got 70-foot grade too, remember that.
Are we aware of whether or not those, any of those pumps are messed up?
We don't think so.
We don't believe so.
They certainly would have been had we kept running.
If the pump station had gotten flooded out, there would have certainly been some pumping and electrical damage, but we were able to prevent that from happening.
When Michael called me that night about 7, that was the first thing we decided to make sure of, to try to save that pump station. And then, you know, it's just, if anything we learned out of this, the pumps, the portable pumps we have on site are, what are they, 8-inch?
They're 6-inch.
6-inch. We might need to invest in a couple larger pumps to have on site ourselves, but you know, this is it's kind of a perfect storm that came together here, but one that, quite frankly, will take some investment to feed. And it's not like it's all new investment, because we set the budget up, allocated a certain amount each year, and that was about 1.4 million for major projects like this going forward. We'll have to increase that for a couple of years going forward, I think, to complete this task. And then we have other tasks out there too. I'm not saying we don't, but this by far would be our priority. I've been involved with these guys this afternoon for a pretty good period of time. So that's just kind of updated where we are. We don't know numbers. It's too early to tell you that, but we'll be working to see what we can do.
You know, somebody, I don't know, asked about a fine or something like that, but you know, it's not, this is not something that's foreseeable. It doesn't appear to me that this is something that's foreseeable, or something we didn't do, or negligence or omission or anything of the sort. I don't understand the fine concept, and we're not reporting any sort of damage to the economy as a result of this, so we're aware of.
Well, the fine would be a violation of the permit, and the permit does not allow SSOs.
Well, we'll follow, and we wouldn't bump it up.
Wouldn't blow the swamp in.
I mean, you know, that just doesn't.
Yeah, they don't, that's not their criteria. In fact, I've had some conversations with them about what their criteria is, and it's really a case-by-case basis. So they look at us individually. So I don't know what the result would be.
So they'll give us a letter of intent to fine,
Correct.
and then you can respond with what we did to mitigate circumstances and alleviate this village,
That's correct.
and sort of appeal the amount, I would assume.
Well, when they issue the intent, they don't tell you what the amount of the fine is. Or at least it's not uncommon for us to get intents.
Right.
And so we deal with that pretty regularly, and we work through the process.
So the information we provide could give them reason to cease at that point.
To reconsider it.
Their intent is, you didn't know what's right, and now that you did, maybe they won't.
Right, because the way the process is you give them a report, you fill it out electronically, and there's very little opportunity to plead your case in their report. And then they issue the intent, and then you plead your case.
What was the total loss, your estimation?
About 3.5 million gallons.
That's close. Michael, why don't you start running some numbers up tonight? We have about 835 miles of water and sewer lines. So if you would take that for a single direct line, I'm going to tell you where we run water. But my mistake, is it Philadelphia?
Yes.
That's where our water and sewer lines was running straight shot.
Well, that's one. So I put this together as a presentation a while back, so I just threw it on really quickly. But if you were to try and determine how much sewer lines, just give people perspective of how much sewer lines we maintain. If you took off from Burlington And if you drove to Philadelphia, that's pretty close to the amount of sewer lines we maintain. 406 miles, so that's 7.5 hours of driving, 70 miles an hour. On the water side, you stop in Baltimore instead of making it all the way to Philadelphia. But, you know, it's about 900 miles that we're maintaining.
Be quite a pump station. But these are all variable sizes, these are bigger lines here, they're not variable sizes, all of them are feeder lines, but, staff will be working on this with, we'll have some back to you guys pretty quick on this.
Any other questions?
Yeah, if you put the sleeve in there, by the pipeline on rock, when you put the sleeve in there, they give us a guarantee that this wouldn't happen again, or?
There's no guarantee.
Yeah.
We took precautions and we dug out as much as we could. We put 57 stone in the bottom of the cushion.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's any guarantee on any of it.
Right, yeah.
I mean, we spent all of January, you know, water line breaks and sewer line breaks.
Yeah.
It was a good amount.
So a couple of them coming in tonight.
We're on Web Avenue right
Yeah.
now.
Any other questions? Mr. Earl?
We had scheduled a break and then public transportation at 7 o'clock. And, Gentlemen, at our last council meeting, Councilman Butler had asked that we bring additional information back in reference to public transportation. What has occurred in the past 90 days is an update to the study that had been prepared, which was done by staff and consultant to give more specific numbers in reference to the potential operation of such a system. There's been conversations held with several of the cities directly, and I think there are times scheduled for finish the conversations up with any other city as we speak this week. So with that, Mike, you want to this is a kind of review of some information which has been emailed to you, or I can put out a hard copy that you've been given in the last few weeks also.
As Harold said, we met with the actual city managers back in August and discussed this whole public transportation topic again. You know, the council brought it back to the table and said, let's talk about it. The managers asked at that time that we relook or revise the 2006 study, which included the financial numbers and routes and operations. So we did that from August to about the end of November. December, we sent out an email to all the city managers to look at that draft update that included the numbers we're going to talk about tonight, and just a service concept of what that would be, you know, give them something they would feel comfortable about going back and talking to the council members. So this is basically what I've been taking out on the road show. I talked to Gibsonville, Elon, we talked to the Nevin staff this week, and indirectly a few other communities, their managers, but a few slides about what we're talking about. And anytime, please just stop me. Refocus on what we're talking about. It's the fixed route system. It's not a door-to-door system. It's based on a central transfer point, location point, where all the vehicles would come. They would go back out from that location on fixed routes. It's proposed that downtown Burlington, just because of geography and location of our area, would be the transport point for the hub, as well as system of coming away from. We've planned the system for a 30-minute headway. I mean, if you got on a bus somewhere on a route, the maximum amount you would be on that bus would be 30 minutes till you got to the hub or to your destination on the next route. You would stop that 30 minutes once you got to the hub. It may take you an hour if you're going the full length of the system, you know, if you wanted to do that. Possibly in our area, I've already mentioned this to others, just because of our diverse, if everyone's a member, it may take us 45 minutes. It may take us 40 minutes. But that's our goal, would be 30 minutes in the short area. But just because if everyone's a part of it, it may be 40, 45 minutes. That's would not be unique to us. It's done in other systems in the state. Definitely want to make you understand this is just an option. This is not meaning we're going to make 50% of our population on the bus. Something that we will provide that does not exist. It's for our residents and community to have a way to get around as another option, even if they do have a car. Definitely, I want to emphasize we will coordinate and partner with existing activities of ACTA, existing activities of the bio bus, which is carrying about 3,300 to 3,500 passengers a school year. That is students and public combined. The two agencies at the end, the Piedmont Authority for Regional Transportation, comes through our county right now and goes to Durham and Chapel City twice a day, meeting the parking ride lot in Graham. We'll talk with them to hopefully begin planning and locating another parking ride lot, either in the eastern part of the county or the western part of the county, since we have one in Graham. We have 3 lots, hopefully, in total. In the last 60 days, we started talking with the Triangle Transit Authority. They've passed some referendums and sales tax, transit dollars, specifically in Orange, Durham, and Wake. They're going to come all the way to Mebane, they already do, with a commuter type express service. They're going to start coming daily into Mebane with their system that goes back to the east to Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. We've discussed even bringing their service into the parking ride lot in Graham.
Question, I hate to interrupt, but.
No, please.
That discussion is, with PARK, is not a part of this discussion. That's, the county commissioners control the future of PARK.
Oh, the funding mechanism, yes, but PARK still comes through our county as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, we'd be able to take advantage of it, if you will.
Well, if we could connect that, that would go from really Boone all the way to Raleigh.
Exactly. Yeah, we would have that ability, you would have that ability now, if we can, even if we bring TTA into the parking ride lot. That's a commuter service. Let's make sure we're clear. Fixed route is what we're talking about for our system. What I'm speaking of here at the end are commuter routes, regional routes, 2 or 3 times a day. So that would be a very positive thing if we can make connections to 2 regional agencies on both ends and have our fixed route system for our community. And you would be, Mayor, as you said, be able to go to Boone, all the way to Raleigh and points east. So we're in discussion now to see if that can happen on a commuter process. Major destinations and major uses. I've talked with you about this before. We're not going down to every neighborhood. We're not going to hit every retail establishment. We're not going to hit every doctor's office. But be your major locations, most likely on your major thoroughfares. Jump right into the expenses and revenues. We've talked about this before. We have our startup capital, which is going to provide us that 90% grant at startup of all of our equipment. Examples of that would be our buses, our signs, our shelters, anything that we need to get the system started. You'll have an operations cost after that startup equipment's purchased. Remember, operations is reimbursed at a 50% reimbursement for operations. When you see service provider, we discussed that is proposed that we would bring a public transportation industry professional firm in that does this nationwide to provide the transit service. They would drive the buses, they would maintain the buses, wash the buses, do the alcohol and drug testing on down the line. It's very common around North Carolina and around the nation to do that, especially with startups. It allows you a turnkey approach to your transit system. Fuel is always going to be up and down. In any business you have, especially heavily reliant, as this will be on fuel, you'll have a cost as that changes. Planning and administration, someone's going to have to manage the process. Someone's going to have to oversee the service provider. Make sure you're getting what you ask for. Cost simply will be based on the service miles in each area. You just pay for the amount of bus miles inside your community. A lot of the other communities have a key question about that. They're not going to be paying for service miles in Burlington, just as you would be paying for service miles in Graham. So that's the way it's proposed at this point. It is a reimbursement, the Burlington will be the lead agency. You receive that grant as a designee. The reimbursement process, it will be on a quarterly basis. It will be a front money payout, get your money back after 3 to 4 months. Costs will increase. We looked at, the last time we spoke, we talked with the Concord, the last system started up. In 10 years, they have doubled their expenses, doubled their services. So their local match has gone from about $225 to about $525.
Is that due to a wider increase?
That's there. Like I said, they went from a Monday to Friday, they went to Saturday. They added 2 more buses. They built a $4 million transit center. They've gone to Sunday service now. In the 10-year window, if you look at that, you can see it go up. That's been a choice. It's just the service that decide to make, the cost went up. Of course, your resources go up annually on any service you have.
Mike, if you're talking about a contract type basis, and we're talking about being the recipient of the 5307 money, how would the capital of the bus, who would own the bus?
It's proposed the city of Burlington owns all the capital.
Okay.
It's very complicated and difficult.
That makes sense.
It's a whole lot easier, and there's benefits to that, and it's proposed the city of Burlington will own all capital at all times until different decisions are made, and there's benefits to that. But at the beginning, everything will be controlled by the city of Burlington capital. Good question. Any other questions about expenses? Revenue. Large grant that we received is Section 5307. That's our federal grant. This year will be about $1.8 million. We've never used that grant before. We've always provided that back to the state. Other systems are allowed to compete for those funds. The two key items that started in the 2006 plan started talking about revenue sources and what we had available locally to use. It's already provided by statute. And two things, the general vehicle tax, that's allowed to be $5 on every registered vehicle in the city. And that's a local decision by the boards. You can use those funds for any lawful purpose that the city provides. It does not have to be all transit. It can be sidewalks, it can be greenways, it can be drainage. Any lawful purpose the city has, it's already on the books. The one that's specific, as you can guess, is transit vehicle tax. Same concept, $5 for every registered vehicle inside your municipal limits. It's a local decision. The key with this one is to keep in mind, you want to start this one because it says that you cannot replace funds, you can only supplement what you're spending. So you'd like to begin collecting this from day one. So whatever you're spending, you're adding to that. You're not going to go out and spend your funds in year 1 and 2, come back and approve the vehicle fee and try to replace it and save money. It's not set up that way. It's an incentive that I want you to add it to, not take the place of what you're doing. Just like the federal government's going to match you 50%. They want to see you're in the game. They're going to match you 50% of your operations. They want to see local funds. So it's the same type of concept. So that's the key with the transit vehicle tax. The general one, you can do it anytime. Is that just in general terms? Of course, you have your city general fund. Some communities I talk with, just going to be in line in the budget. We'll receive about 10% overall from DOT in general. For capital, for operations, planning, about 10% or less. A lot of systems right now are projecting, 5%, 1%, 0%. When you're making a $2,000 purchase, there's more time involved to get $200 than is really necessary to do it. I mean,
You had a conversation with DOT officials about
every day. I mean, they're just waiting to know if we want to use our money because the big question's coming soon about that 1.8 million. Rider fees, 10% projection. If that at all, you'll be doing very well if you get 10%. Some systems, High Point's one of those that gets one of the best in the state, it's about 14 or 15, still about $100,000. That's what you're talking about. Rider fees. Some systems to our east in the triangle, going fare free, looking for ridership. Trying to make it very free to ride. Just different ideas. That's your basic revenue.
In our budget, we're thinking what? In reference to this project, what kind of money are we using, $1, $2?
The fares, right now, we've gone from 1 to 4, but we've projected on $1.
Okay.
But the study suggests looking at anywhere from 1 to 4, depending on your diet for increases later.
Right.
On this one, look at the, anyway, if you look at the area, this map route system is really just a service area. It's not meant to, it did, of course, go down major thoroughfares. We had to start with something. But this gives you a concept of the system. This is where it would reach all the way out to Nevin, through Hall River. Here's Graham. The red routes here in Burlington, blue routes here. For Burlington, you can see the reason why all the routes would come together. We're basically covered, and you'll see shortly it's over 50% of the system is going to be in Burlington. Very simply, this blue line, and as well go up this street, just as easy it goes to Elon. These reds can go other ways. That's to be determined. But we realize that we want to cover this type of service area, or have proposed to do that.
So that's 4 route system.
4 routes, maybe 5, depending on the service times of the longer routes. We may have to meet in the middle somewhere and be efficient in our time to make sure those 30 to 45 minute headways are met. We don't want someone here or here saying, well, I'm not gonna ride the bus, it takes me 45 minutes to go everywhere.
Is that including the connection with the bio bus?
Yes, we would propose to go right on campus here, as well as we'll do one downtown that's already existing. But again, just concept wise, you see the major thoroughfares. The numbers, this is the information we went back and I mentioned the 2 vehicle taxes that are currently on the books now to use. Burlington here being the top line. 2012 we had 41,184. Simply multiply each of those by $5. It's the same amount in each column. So you've got 205,920. Combine those two, 411. Projecting year one operations cost of about 344,700, based on those routes you just saw for that. So yes, there's several of these that have a surplus. As any system or any service you provide, you're going to need surplus, you're going to need capital equipment purchases, you're going to need things next. We're not talking large dollars here, but you're going to need to start building a surplus of some amount the next time you go to provide a local match for the equipment purchase, which will be 20% match. You get 80% of your capital next time, but you'll need 20% to buy that next bus, and so on down the line. So the only one that it does not, as you can see, is Hall River. Their combined revenue is projected about 21,000, and they're at 46,000. We're still waiting, I don't know if Harold, you got anything official from them? Okay. I wouldn't want to speak for them. I've talked to a few of the board members, but we're still waiting on everyone officially except Gibsonville. Gibsonville voted that night to be on board with the system should you decide to go forward.
Mike, let me ask you a question about future capital needs, and there being a 20% match. If we own all capital assets, could we liquidate those capital assets toward the match?
After the useful life of it, if you sell them or provide them to other transit systems in North Carolina, you can. They don't like you selling them privately on the private market and using that for, they want you to cooperate and make sure it helps out others.
Okay, so what are they estimated the useful life of that?
7, maybe 11 years, 7 if they're industrial, commercial. In our area, with it being flat, rolling, probably not a lot of hard salt weather, maybe 10 years.
I know Acton goes through bid, Dr. Oven sells a lot of theirs and recoups it and uses that towards their match. They might do that on their.
Yeah, we'll be able to use those funds. The use of that to match federal dollars is a little bit different, but we'll be able to use those funds when that happens. But maintaining the equipment with your service provider is key. Back there, the maintenance is the key. They can last longer. These are top of the line, motor coaches that everybody's using around the state. I mean, it's a commercial, heavy industrial, and the feds provide that. That's the kind of specs they're going to make you buy anyway. But they'll provide 90% of the funds. Other questions?
Are you aware of any city that has gone out of business?
Yes, sir. Not the transit business. In the modern era with the federal grants, not in the North Carolina urban areas. Your Winstons, your Wilmingtons, your Rocky Mounts, Nashville's, and all that.
Mike, does the spending timeline out 5 years, what does that look like?
We projected 5 to 8% increase, but that's going to be based, there's a flat line for about 3 years, because you're trying to see what your community needs and wants and the changes you make. In that 4th and 5th year is when you start deciding, which is going to come, when you're going to start serving Saturday. And that's when it's going to spike. Then what are you going to do about Sunday? It's just going to be, like I said on that slide, it's going to be a choice decision on what the community wants and then what the community can afford. But you're looking at least 5, maybe even 10% if you go with those additional service days. It doubled in 10 years in Concord, as I said. It started at 225 and they're over 500,000 now.
Their actual cost.
Their actual cost. And they have the $5 in place. They have the $5 transit vehicle registration fee in place.
Are there any cities that use this somewhere on a private-public partnership where, the larger employers, contributing in any way to the annual operating costs?
I'm familiar with the only examples I'm familiar with, public-private, have been bus shelter locations, maybe bus tokens or bus fares, location to turn the bus around. Your communities would have universities. They're contributing. I know Appalachian, Carolina, Rainey St. It's a joint effort as far as funding that system, because most of that's on their campus.
I think Baptist contributed to part in Winston some.
Yeah.
For their employees
Yes.
who were utilizing the
They were
system,
that's right.
but not for their patrons.
There's tax benefits, when you get into the details, there's tax benefits to providing those for your employees, those transit fares or transit cards. But in our case, we don't have a lot of paid parking for our employees here, so we're not going to benefit from a lot from that. There's programs out there for your employees if you want to provide half their fare or their whole fare or things like that. And if you use the right technology with a fare card, Tuesdays and Thursdays, maybe they're eligible to ride for half or something. I'm just throwing that out, but there's lots of ways to do that if employees want to get involved. That's definitely a big thing. Again, the number's just a little bit more concise and direct. I mentioned the percent of the system. You see Burlington will have 55% of the system in coverage. That map displayed, and you can go right down the line. You can see the cost also reducing that. Keep in mind, as operations, the asterisk at the bottom here, you'll have a match for the equipment before any of this gets started. So that's your operations cost in year one, and then about $290,000 for the buses and equipment to get started for the city of Burlington. The others simply would be the numbers shown there on the chart.
That's based on everybody participating.
That's based on everybody participating in the operations side.
Right, but again, startup would be City of Burlington. Exactly, that's why I mentioned that at the bottom, equipment. You're looking for the City of Burlington, it's $290,000 estimated to get the fleet, to get the equipment, the bus stops and shelters. Okay, and the next year at operation, you would have that 344 number.
Shelters meaning in other municipalities, or just City of Burlington?
No, what you would do with the shelters is you would do a cost share when they're in their community, you do a cost share of that.
Okay.
What was proposed in most systems, when you start up, you don't go out and throw out a bunch of permanent shelters everywhere. You do ones that are the major employers, the major medical places, and universities, because it's highly likely those are going to be heavily used. The others, you want to find out where they're at, because these are concrete, in the ground, ADA accessible type things, nice. So you go ahead and purchase those, and you filter your way through and find out what the best way to install them is. Questions?
Mike, when will we hear from the other municipalities? Is there some kind of informal deadline?
We had suggested the end of February, is what we had suggested. And I think several of them are having budget retreats and budget meetings, or I'm going to speak to them this month.
I would think that they'd have to have a public hearing and vote on it publicly and all that good stuff for each municipality.
Gibsonville did it that evening. Well, they could.
Without a public hearing?
Without a public hearing.
Because I was thinking that same question, and I put down in my notes, we need to know for sure by the end of April. We're thinking about trying to deal with this by the spring of the year. That gets us into May to have this dialogue, conversation, public hearing, whatever we're going to do. Vote it up or down, move forward, or stop it. So I think somewhere along the line we need some type of information, Harold, coming from you to each manager to simply state, we're on a timeline, we're on a deadline. We need a yes or no from you, whether you're in or out. And it needs to be sooner than later, I would think. In February may be too soon for some of them. We've only heard from Gibsonville, right? So we said earlier.
Right. The others are they're having their budget retreats, and we'll know more by the end of February. So that's what we'd ask for. communication with them.
Mike, the ones, the systems that are in place, do they operate as city departments?
They do sort of a quasi operation, as I mentioned, the smaller ones definitely use a service provider. There's several that have transitioned into a full city department, meaning people, mechanics, everything on site. So I mean, you've got a lot of those that have started out small, and your bigger urban areas, for example, in Charlotte or Raleigh, you may get on a Charlotte bus, and it's a City of Charlotte patch on there, but they're a driver for ATC Transit Corporation. They're under contract to do that. But it's different in different cities. Yes, there are some cities that have 100% city people, city facilities, and everything. It's sort of a mixed bag.
And you're talking about the facility for maintaining these buses is not owned by the city.
Right.
Okay.
That's part of their maintenance agreement.
And so that organization goes out and buys the land and builds the facility.
Typically what they'll do, which is good for the community, they'll come in and try and find one of those facilities that is either like that, or they can upfit it, or in the short-term scenario, they will contract or work with an existing vendor or existing company in the community to maintain those buses. All have to be done locally, obviously. They'll have to work there, they'll have to have a place to park them, secure them. But they'll come in and find a facility. I'm not familiar with them building one, but most times they can find one, they can upfit, but it's something they come in and secure and start a new business, and 99% of the time, they like to hire local people that know the system, know the streets and things like that. You have to have your CDL to drive a bus, but they're coming in, bringing their management structure in, but they need labor force and facilities. So I mean, it's something they come in just like a new business and start.
And down beating our door down and come in here, how do we get them in here as a possibility to look at?
Well, what they'll do, if this ever happens, the RFP will go out, and it's very thick, very specific, approved by the feds and the state and locals, what we want exactly, how they're going to be maintained, who's going to check them, how often. They'll come in and do site surveys and try and find a location. That's what they do. That's very important to their business. I mean, to get that contract, they've got to have a local facility. That's one of the main things it says.
Could you contract out everything and still get the 307 money?
Yes.
That's kind of the way we would envision this, really, because you've got companies that will bid on this, and that keeps it, in the beginning especially. You have to have the administrator sort of through the city, but they pretty much can do a turnkey job. Now, Mike, what we didn't speak to, that you might have, was a potential governing board. May ask a question about this, Bob.
I do have a question. Listen to what you have to say first.
Yeah, we mentioned this a bit before when we talked about how would it be governed. We talked about authority, which is an option. We talked about commission. The suggestion from the study and the update is to go the commission route, where you would simply have a public body that would have the same rules and regulations as a public body, minutes, agendas, open meetings, guidelines, have an interlocal agreement that you operate under that can include everything that you would like, from membership to how you get in, how you get out, how you vote, an agreement on how you're going to operate and communicate on transit, elected officials from each agency. Most likely 2 from Burlington, since you're going to be the largest agency, with 50% of it, will be on that commission. You have a budget to be adopted by the cities. You have a budget just like anything else to work within during the year. That commission will be heavily involved month to month, week to week, daily oversight of that. That's where the example I gave, and not that they won't come to your council meetings, but that commission is your tool to address complaints, to address requests for new service. That's where people would go with those types of requests. Certainly can come to you first, but that's your tool and mechanism for the transit system. It's the transit system. That's why they exist. Be a lot of work in the beginning, and we'll get to that in a second. But question?
Yeah,
is he going? Okay. I mean, that would be a new commission. Everyone would appoint, probably 2 members from here and 1 from other communities that participated.
Mike, let me ask a question here. What is the most common form of governance? Is
Commission?
It's typically a commission, because when you get into an authority, in fact, we have, the Alamance County Act, it is an authority by statute already. You know, Piedmont Area Regional Transportation is an authority, TTA is an authority. With that comes the taxing ability and a little bit more authority and responsibility, if you will, if you want to use it as a transit commission. And the study just didn't see that was needed here yet. Maybe later, but the transit commission could be the body that sort of started it up and see what was needed next. I mean, you certainly could do it. It looked at the authority as well, and that's an option. But it's suggesting that we do a transit commission. Work items, what are they going to do? A lot. They're going to do a lot. Of course, we just have to get organized first, get your finances straightened, the equipment, what kind of buses. I talk in general terms a lot, but there's a lot of details to start a transit system. The color, the name, the color of the seats, the logos. It makes a difference, and these things make big differences to the public, to educating what the transit system is, marketing, education of how to use transit. What is transportation? What is that bus driving down? I spoke about the service provider. That'll be a request for proposals process. We'll build time in for that. Interviews, selection of firms, getting them in here, getting them going to work, ready to start.
All right, question, if we agree to do this May, June, whatever, when will we see the first bus rolling?
We'd like for a spring or early fall. We'd like to have a good weather start. So with that, possibly an April, May, or August, September next year, 15.
15.
Yeah. Definitely 12 months, 12 to 14.
How much input would this council have as far as establishing routes, or would you be a condition, would it be submitted?
No, that's what you do. That's the commission does the routes, they do the timing, they address the complaints, they address the compliments, they decide on the recommendation, do we need to start a Saturday service? They make recommendations at budget time of what that service is going to do. If the bus is late, that commission needs to find out why. If it's on time and everybody's loving it, then we need to find a way to publicize that and get that out. That's part of their job. It'll be very intense.
We make the decision whether we move forward, and then the commission takes over from there. Is that what you're saying?
On the startup, then they'll have to develop a budget. They'll have to develop a budget, which most likely will be highly the numbers you've seen here. That's what it would likely be. It would come back just like anything else, be approved as a city budget, be approved in everybody else's jurisdictions, so make sure we have the revenue.
Is the transit commission making recommendations to council?
Yes.
On these things?
So again, I'm sorry, no.
The transit commission, Mike saying, would be making recommendations to council regarding these issues.
Yeah, it's like any other agency or department that comes to you. It's going to be a recommended or a proposed budget, and why, or why not.
Now, let's make it clear. That's not every item going to city council now. It's just the budget we're talking about.
Correct, it's like, right, correct, the budget.
This is not every operational item that come back to council, if the commission is in place.
It's an annual thing.
Yes, sir, that's right. That would be a daily, monthly.
Right, that's what I said before, your mechanism and tool for the transit system will be that commission.
Yeah.
Anyone, just like any other issue you have before you, anyone can come and ask you for something, that's not gonna be deterred or stopped. But that commission,
It's gonna be no different than some of our boards and commissions now, where things are vetted through them, and then they make recommendations back to council as needed. And some of it we debate, some of it's on the consent agenda, it's just gonna operate very simple.
Is it in fact, what Jim's saying there, is advisory, as
Yeah.
opposed to making decisions?
yes, they're gonna be charged in that agreement though with making the decisions on the routes and the schedules and the
Operational decisions within the budget that's been approved.
It's like approving a budget that includes, for the NPO, for example, we're gonna do 2 studies next year. Okay, we know what those studies are, how we do them and what's in them, we get to that once it's approved. It's any other examples that you have of that in your departments. Certainly if you have a request, I think that would be something that budget time you'd say, we prefer you look at Saturday service, or don't look at Saturday service, or we're not gonna, that's something you'll have the ability to do each year. But they'll have to come up with that budget, a budget recommendation, actually will go to the city manager, and like everything else, city manager will go to you.
The city of Burlington just does this alone. We still have to have the commissioner on that.
You do not have to have a commission. I don't know if you just have one agency in it, I don't think you have another, that's something up to you.
Well, what says you have to have a commission at all anyway? You just hand it by intergovernmental?
You can, that's what I'm saying, if you wanna write that in the interlocal agreement of how those decisions are gonna be made and everybody that's participating agrees, and how you resolve that, I guess should be in there as well, but you can certainly.
I'm a firm believer if you're gonna be held responsible for something, including, you better have control over the dollars. That's the fallacy of the school board. They don't control their own dollars, but they're held responsible. Okay? And that's when I look at something like this. I think Bob Wood has just hit upon the key question here, and that's governance.
That's what?
Governance.
We're just using a model that's used in every other city, but we can certainly do something
I
different.
understand.
Now, I'm gonna be devil's advocate for a minute. That means that every city is involved if there's a request for a bus stop in Mebane, that comes to the Burlington City Council to make that decision. That's what's going on right now with Wake County and Raleigh with their water and sewer system. If Wake Forest wants to extend sewer and water in the town of Wake Forest, they come to the town of Raleigh to make that decision. And honestly, you know, there's gotta be some real trust between local governments to do that. That's an option, but that's you know. Is that fair, Mike?
That's very fair. Yeah, and we discussed this with the last system in Concord and Kannapolis, discussed it the same way. Their councils, it's all in choice. Simply did not, exactly, that would happen. It would be, you would have it on your agenda monthly. But, you know, that's certainly an option. You can structure it however you like. But I think the key there would just be your other partners. You know, however you're gonna resolve those decisions and work that out, certainly can be done.
And with that route, that goes back to Bob's issue, you probably need to have it would be a department, but you certainly have to have whether it's a department head or someone responsible for that system if it's coming, everything coming back to you guys. I would think, be no different than the same thing would be with Tony and recreation.
Yeah, it's the concept or the model that's used is exactly that way. It's set up like any other department, you're just calling it transit. But it's going to be the same model concept, but it can definitely be flexible.
But if Burlington started the transit system themselves, that's the start of, and then branch out to the other cities. I mean, that's a possibility, we can do that first.
Sure.
And then we'll see how, well, we might have Rochester's gonna be here, but if you run one bus to Elon, one bus to Fall River, maybe somewhere down that area.
Sure. And that's what I'm saying, it doesn't impact the way it's set up, it's what you pay for the service you have in your community.
Yeah.
So if Gibsonville wants it, they're paying for the service inside their community. If Elon doesn't, it's no impact on
But
everybody
they're
else.
just paying for mileage in their city.
It's that kind of agreement and setup. You're not impacting someone else if you don't participate, or if you do.
Are we prepared for example, for Graham not to participate, and we still go into Graham to go to the courthouse, and then go to the community college as well?
That's a question we've been talking about several times. That's going to be a decision I think for Burlington to make, because there's going to be no one else to pay for that service.
Yeah, I just can't imagine having a public transportation system in the city of Burlington and not being able to go to your county seat in Graham, or even going to the community college.
Well, I think a county seat would be much easier to incorporate that into a route than the community college. So the county seat would almost be a foregone conclusion to come up with some sort of program there, but if you're talking about going out to community college, that's radically different.
Okay.
Next steps, we sort of got into that a little bit, just providing information to folks, updating them, determining their level of interest, what kind of partnerships, what level they want to be a part of this, report back to you, and then, sort of stop there. And if we want to move forward, simply, are we going to have a transit system, and then how are we going to fund it? To get past that point, how do we govern it? Is it a commission, is it a board, whatever it is, that's our next steps. and then start with implementation, which is 12 to 15 months.
That's just me, I think that we need to know what the other municipalities will do by the end of March.
Yeah, I mean, I work with, as on the TCC and TAC, I work with them, and I think they're all prepared by the end of February. I think, unless their councils at a meeting say, let's do this.
Once we figure out who's in, then we can have more dialogue about the actual routes or whatever the case may be ready to move this up or down in Mayor's County.
Yeah, I think we'll have some better notion of the, the type of governance, the representation, that sort of thing. I agree, I think we need to know then.
I'm not sure you're gonna be ready by the end of February.
I said the end of March, I said that.
Because I'll be honest, I've talked to most of the managers and, I think we got a pretty good core group. It's just, I think Mevin's the way out.
I'm sorry.
I'm not sure Mevin's there all the way yet. I think
Go
Graham,
back. Can you go back to the slide that shows the participation area?
Graham is, I think as we try to talk to, I was told, maybe a budget work session in late February. Gibson Bill obviously is committed. Elon is in Mike's met with them for a significant period of time, but they're in transition with managers. I'm not sure exactly where that's gonna play out in terms of their decision. And then they have the BioBus option that's there too, which is, is a little bit more complex. I don't know about Fall River right now. I don't know. I mean, the core was, we first talked about was Burlington, Meadows, Graham, Elon, Gibsonville, in terms of that core kind of deal, but.
I'm sorry,
But that's, right now, I think this concept of governance gets to be really important because, I'm not sure how they stand on this. If, in terms of what their role would be or want to be in terms of a board, I can't speak to that.
Well, we need to find out at the beginning who's gonna be in, who's gonna be out, and then we can move the conversation along.
Well, it's based on the equivalency of the split on a per mile basis, and that's gonna be the mile that would be inside of Gibsonville, the mile, I think, so theoretically, if Fall River's not in, you don't have their $46,500, but you don't have their $46,500 expense.
That's right.
So the 344 is constant. That's constant whether they join or whether they don't join.
Right.
Make no mistake about that. It's not indicative of their participation. It's not gonna make our cost be any less. And the prior year startup capital matches all of the city of Burlington regardless. So what you're seeing from the city of Burlington, now as much as you're gonna go March 1st. It's just whether or not the routes are gonna be structured for those other entities.
And again, I think we're sitting on this thing and sitting on it, so we've got to do something about it now. You say March, May?
I was just saying, we need to know what they were gonna
Yeah,
do
if they
back
don't-
in the March.
Yeah, if they don't do it, nobody gets back to us by the end of March, we need to go ahead and just set it up for the city of Burlington.
Right. That route then is not part of the plan?
Right. It comes in, they decide they want to.
I will attempt to reach each one of the managers again and see what, their comments are. And, Mike, you've got Nevin this week. I know I'll double check again with Graham.
Is that with staff, Mike?
Just by knowing them, I've talked to a couple of council members, they haven't done it officially yet, so, we don't know. We don't know officially. So, I hesitate to say. Just wait.
All right. Any other questions for Mike? Thank you, Mike.
We've, with the interest in growth, especially downtown, in the industry of food trucks, we have been kind of attempting to come up with a proposed policy or really an ordinance on how to handle food trucks within our community. So, we challenged, actually started with Bob Hargrader and now with Amy to come up with a proposal for an ordinance and how this potentially would work and how we would, work with these vendors. And these vendors are getting more and more popular. Amy?
Okay, food trucks are getting more popular. They're springing up in cities all across the country, not just across the state. What we're bringing to you tonight is just sort of a first attempt at an ordinance. We think it's pretty good. We've looked at other communities to see what they're doing and try to sort of put together something that we thought would fit pretty well for Burlington. Now, these other cities, they put forth their first effort and then they come back months later to tweak it a little bit if the public so chooses, and really most of the cities end up doing that at some point. Usually because the food trucks have gotten so popular, they want the regulations relaxed a little bit. But we decided to be a little more conservative with it because again, it can always be changed. It will be in addition to the code of ordinances, chapter 26, peddlers. We will add Article 3, and that is what you have in your packets. I'm just going to sort of hit a few highlights here. Talking about the operation. No food truck or push cart vendors shall operate within 300 feet of any schools or churches or cemeteries. They also have to keep a minimum distance of 50 feet from an existing brick and mortar restaurant, unless they have permission from that restaurateur to be any closer. Hours of operation, they're not going to run 24 hours a day. They start at 7 a.m. and they can go until 2 a.m. And that's so that we can incorporate any special events, anything that might go on downtown in the future, such as more residential development. We have special Friday night events downtown so that they're able to operate during that time frame. It's kind of doubtful they would do that for, let's say, probably a few years yet, just because we don't have that kind of activity downtown right now. But these are a good assist to getting your downtown more lively and getting more people downtown, and then people want to live downtown. And that's when you get the people living downtown, that's where you start seeing the turnaround economically, and you can bring in more businesses.
Bricks and mortar businesses.
Yes, well, not just restaurants, but retail also, and it brings your whole downtown to life. The idea is to get more activity downtown, so you have people coming downtown. There's a draw there. It's not just the food trucks; it's things associated with that, special events and all, so that you bring people downtown. They like being there. There's stuff to do all the time, so then they want to live downtown, and that's where you bring in even more restaurants and more retail. You know, so this is a potential catalyst, not guaranteed, but it's a step. Let's see. They shall be parked on private property with the property owner's permission. There's not a lot of that downtown, so what we are doing, the V3 downtown is not showing too good on here, but I brought this just in case anybody wanted to look at it. Just this little core downtown, people can park on the street, but they have to follow the same rules as anybody who parks downtown, 2-hour limit, and there's one per block. So
Question.
There won't be a whole lot of them, at least not right now.
So you're saying they would be allowed in the tax district?
They can be downtown in the central business district, because there's really no place for them otherwise. We're letting them park on the street, but they have to be, the side that they're serving from has to be on the sidewalk for safety reasons.
What's I see one per block, okay? But are you better off trying to put these all into one area for control purposes?
Well, you could do that. The reasoning behind that was, it was felt that the compressed compressors and all the machinery that they use to keep the refrigerators running and the heaters going, and equipment cooking. It's kind of loud, so that was the reason behind that. Now, I've heard them before, and I didn't think they were too terribly offensive myself, but again, we're bringing this to you. You can either take it like this, or you can give us feedback, and we'll go back and we'll tweak it a little bit, however you like.
Somewhere in there, I think, yeah, but there's no tables, chairs around.
Right. Right. Just because the area is limited downtown, because I mean our sidewalks are fairly wide, but not overly wide. And it was concerned about congestion and still being able to
Yeah,
pass.
some of the streets, we had street cutoffs. I know especially in front of the library when we had the function down there, the street was blocked off anyway.
Right.
So I mean,
Now, if the street is blocked off for the special event for Parks and Rec, say that, then they can be anywhere. That's totally separate.
yeah, still no chair, no tables there.
No, they would be able to do that with a
Okay.
special event.
All right.
Yeah, it's a
I
totally separate.
understand this a little bit better on a special event, like Friday night downtown, that sort of thing. I'm okay with it, but I'm having a hard time understanding that why we have a district, and right off the top of my head, I'm thinking of Zach's, for example, that pays, and then these guys just come in and serve and move on and make profit, move on.
Well, a lot of times, in the research that I've done for this, to start a restaurant, it could take $300,000.
Sure.
A lot of people don't have that kind of money.
Right.
So what they do is they'll get a food truck that'll be around $50,000 to $100,000, and they'll upfit it and get everything set and get their licenses and all that. And they go out and they start testing the waters to see if the public likes what they're doing. Maybe they like it in this location, but it's not so good over here. And that gives them an idea. They build up clientele and popularity, and then a lot of them do switch to a brick and mortar restaurant afterwards.
I went to a seminar, and this, Ronnie, you're exactly, the nice thing about this is that we're not on the front edge of the learning curve here by any means. This has been going on around this nation for quite a while now. And everybody, all the cities go through this because it does seem just a little disadvantage to the bricks and mortar folks that are paying taxes and that sort of thing. It seems like an unfair advantage. A lot of cities have realized that they can utilize this concept to turn around and basically get different. You want to increase your foot traffic downtown. You want to do this sort of build up the downtown. This is what they are doing. This is what they are doing to get folks downtown. And so it's kind of a two-edged sword. You don't want to kill off your bricks and mortar folks downtown, but at the same time, flashing. But at the same time, it's the kind of thing that a lot of cities have tried to take control of this, not to turn around and outlaw it by any means, but to turn around and utilize it to be an incentive for entrepreneurs who want to then turn around and go from a food truck to having their own restaurant downtown here.
These food trucks will be associated with a restaurant as well. They'll have some kind of an agreement, like for storing their food or something like that with that restaurant. That's how they tend to operate, because they have to have a place to keep all their food. And
Yeah, we
Because they don't necessarily
talk
agree
about
with
the health department aspect of this.
they have to be approved by the health department as well.
Okay, because a lot of cities in the bigger cities actually have commissaries, I think that was the term they use, basically, where these folks have to start from during the front of the their day and have to go back to at the end of their day, and the inspectors there, of course, those are the bigger cities, and that sort of thing.
What do we have downtown? We have Foster's, we have Danny's, we have the Co-op, we have Zach's, what else?
Moses.
What?
Moses.
Okay.
And Subway.
And so,
That's it.
welcome back, Mr. Baker. I think Mr. Ward told me it was an hour. About 28 minutes to be exact.
Bob, I thought I heard the beaters.
All right, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's like 6 places downtown, something like that.
Right.
We're not gonna have a lot.
And
Ann, what do you, okay, Ann, you want to speak, so, tell me.
Well, just to reinforce what's being said, which I agree with, is that, you know, we do have 6 restaurants downtown, and reinforcing Amy's comment about the $300,000, that's probably even a little on the light end. It can be much more than that. What people, from all the surveying we've done, and it's been pretty extensive this last year or so, they want restaurants. They want cool, funky restaurants specifically. And we're not known, downtown's not known as a place to go out to eat. You know, that we have that located in another part of the city. And so entrepreneurs, restaurateurs, they look at, you know, how likely people are going to come downtown to eat. And so it's kind of chicken and egg in a way. There's a high investment amount needed, and then there's not a customer base. So food trucks are one way to put your toe in the water and become known, because oftentimes these food trucks they're able to do more, you know, fusion type things or cutting it, something that's different, and because they're on a smaller scale.
Let me just interject. Jim's just made a great point. We're not talking about just the downtown business district, are we?
That's what I was just getting ready to ask, because on this it's just identified as downtown. Is that, because we have
they can
parks.
They can be industrial also.
Okay,
So it's downtown and industrial.
You're on the other side of Putt-Putt right now as we speak.
Right.
In fact, we're trying to quickly.
Yes,
Right.
so if we've got a section of this ordinance that eliminates any sort of table or chairs or anything outside, would that be specifically meant to those that park on the right of way? Or if someone's rented a commercial lot that they're parking this thing on every day that has adequate space?
That would be private property,
Okay,
so that's
allowable.
they have to work that out.
Go ahead, finish, Ann, I'm sorry.
In terms of the equity argument, the tables and chairs are kind of part of that. With the restaurants, it's a different environment. People who want to eat in a restaurant will go into a restaurant because there's a place to sit down, it's comfortable, you can have a conversation. Food trucks are at that disadvantage because their customers are standing in the potentially heat or cold, there's no place to sit down. So it's, for a day-to-day type of operation, it's really, in some ways, apples and oranges. And what we looked at in talking about a privilege license fee for this, when we look at like the typical property value and what they're paying into our district, and then we look at that annual fee, there's some parity there at this point in time. So you know, for example, some of the restaurants that I've talked with, that's their concern, is that, well, you know, I'm all for competition, we just want it to be an equal playing field. And so this fee is a way to help.
Balance.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have had an opportunity to talk to at least some of these 6. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I must have missed the part about the fee.
No, I haven't gotten to that.
Oh, okay, good.
Really, the only fee though that we've come up with thus far is the current peddler by vehicle.
That's not,
What?
the peddler by vehicle fee on a cruise license schedule, I think it's only $15 per guy, per regular peddler going around carrying his goods and selling them. So the fee would be nominal compared to property tax.
Oh, well, I thought we were looking at more like, I mean, I missed out on those discussions. I guess those later discussions, or early discussions, we were looking at a maximum of like $150 annual fee.
Yes.
Did you decide not to go that
Well,
direction?
in discussions with Frank, we were trying to determine what kind of a fee. Greensboro charges $150, Raleigh $25, Chapel Hill $25, Durham $125, Asheville $32.
That's something that certainly could be put in the ordinance, depends on what you do. This thing is going through so many ramifications in cities. Raleigh probably had the most controversy because of the fixed mortar, and they went to they had a high number, which got more people. They went to assigned places certain feet away, and what I think they found out down there is actually increased the traffic, foot traffic. It's benefited some of the, as Ann was saying, if somebody wants to go in a restaurant and sit down, you know, this is not about that option. So the fee thing certainly can be implemented with council if that's a way of looking at it in terms of offsetting a property tax that a bricks and mortar company would pay. Honestly, there may be some of them downtown, you know, throughout, but a lot of them, I think, will be the special events. We primarily, the use of these, I think, in the beginning.
Can I just wanna get another clarification. So the I-1, I-3, give me an explanation of what that would be, or I-2, excuse me.
That's industrial.
I know.
But like where?
Where in that area, where in the city would those fall?
Where you have industry,
Okay.
but, I mean, I don't have.
So
a-
help me
I don't have a
understand if we
map.
have the carousel festival or something at the park.
Public parks, you're okay.
No,
We're
you're
okay in
totally
public park.
separate, cause that's a special event.
Okay,
Event.
all right.
I too, many of us think, remember, it was when, even at our garage, at 10 o'clock breakfast, when trucks would come over and
Yeah.
serve food.
Right.
I'm sure you spent all your car dealerships over the years. It's kind of an offset of all this is just evolved.
Well, the other thing too, anywhere they're building, when we were building Highland, when they were building Lake McIntosh, those trucks would flood through there, just on 11:15, 11:30, they would
Yeah.
flow through there and stop. I think this is fine. I just think there needs to be some balancing between, like these 6 restaurants and a fee attached to these trucks, so there's some equity there. That's what I'm saying. And it needs to be a little more than like $20.
We can come back something with that.
Sure. Well, those cities that have put those fees in place, $132, are they tied to anything regarding providing service by the city? Or is that simply because you have extra garbage pickup from these sites that you, or is it related to extra public safety involvement?
Combination thereof.
With our ordinance, we're requiring them to take out their own materials and not deposit in the city.
I mean, you look at the large cities over there, they have something in their downtown going on all the time. You say Asheville, Raleigh, you look at Raleigh, you go down to Raleigh anytime, around the state capitol, food trucks everywhere. You know, we don't have that. These guys just come out and try to make a living. Need food for it sometimes, but that's what you have to do. I mean, you have to do that to make a living. And my truck may not come downtown. I may go to all the construction sites around here. It might come downtown at all.
Well, there's a couple of, there's one that's over at, on Medina Street, right there near Walmart, which hangs out all the time. There's one right there across from Biscuitville on North Church Street. There's one that hangs out on the corner of Beaumont and North Church Street, that little convenience store all the time. So there's one right there.
The one across from Walmart trying to do roads.
Is that a recommended item?
It's a recommended item.
Number 8.
Amy, if they come around, say, the amusement park, you know, where we have concessions, or Springwood Park, or Davidson, where we're already selling concessions, is that gonna be legal for them to do anytime they wanted to? We've got activities going on?
It's got the zones in here where they're allowed, and they'd be coming to the park for a special event.
But not just on a daily basis, where we
No,
already,
they're not gonna drive on Main Street and stop right there at the park. They can't do that.
Tony, that might not be a bad option, get us out of the business.
you could be right, Harold.
Anything else for any?
So the fee would be uniform across the city. And like the mayor was talking, you know, the 6 restaurants downtown are a special tax district, so obviously they're paying a surplus anyway. But what we're talking about is the fee to be uniform across the city regardless.
Right. And a little more than $25.
I'll make one comment. I was at a meeting in Durham a couple months ago, and it was in this little business incubator building, if anybody knows what that is. But this is something that is, I guess, can become an offshoot of these things. And I don't even remember what it was, but there's this driveway, and in and out the whole time during that meeting were food trucks coming in, because they use the kitchen to prepare the big meals that they put onto the truck somehow, I guess. So it can, I think, stimulate some economic development down the road and those concepts as well.
If you go to Durham, below the baseball stadium, that
That's
area,
good.
that whole garage area, not only because of restaurants, but also food truck has become a fixture down in that area now. We will work on this and come back to you with some additional information, and we'll go from there.
I've got a question.
Okay.
Down where it says permits required, it says, this permit shall be waived for mobile food vendors directly associated with special events and nonprofit organizations.
That would be under the control of Parks and Rec whenever they're doing a special event.
There's some concern, it says, and for nonprofit, which they just be permanently waived. In other words, you see, it's conjunctive, it's not and or.
Well, I think the idea is that when you're having special events, you're closing the streets, so you're gonna have vendors, whoever they are, most likely coming in. And so that's the distinction really, the distinction is between special events and non-special event days.
Why the distinction between profit and non-profit?
But when, it reads, and for nonprofit organizations, there's no qualification to that at all.
I think it's probably in case there's like a church having some kind of an event on their lawn or whatever, and they're selling anything there. I will check on that and get back with you.
You know, we use, United Way uses, these trucks. We started last year, using these trucks.
So I think the intent is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that if you are holding an event and you're whoever you are, and you want to have these vendors come in, and they don't have a permit in the city because you're bringing somebody from
Durham.
Yeah, Durham. They don't have to pay the peddler fee just to come to the one event. It's only if they're operating on a regular basis.
Yeah,
I think
on a
that's the
regular
intent that
basis.
you're trying to get at.
Yeah, because I don't think any nonprofits are going around all the time with a food truck. So I think that's what was meant by that term.
Yeah, but I tell you, if we go to a fee, I don't know how you determine for one event. I think that's a consistent concern now. Charles helped me, Bob, and David. When do we charge and not charge?
Wait a minute, why not Ronnie and Sheila?
I don't want to be included in
I think they got a little more education on that one. I think that's a concern is picking when we can charge and not charge.
Well, I guess the difference is between an event vendor and a mobile peddler, really, right? So there's two, they're the same entity, but they're two different functions.
Right.
So what you need to charge a fee for is someone who wants to be a regular mobile peddler. But just like you're hiring a catering company and they're bringing food to you, you're hiring somebody to bring their truck and serve it out, and it's sort of the same thing. So you wouldn't be charging caterers a fee. Is my logic right there?
Yes.
Now, but we do, for some things, charge, like for the Fourth Fridays, did you start charging for the food trucks?
Well,
So-
we tried, but I think what we're gonna go more towards is a sponsorship, type of thing, because it works better to do it that way.
real space.
The peddler's license would be 1 year, right, Frank?
But that's just a fee for doing business.
Right, I
It doesn't mean
understand.
anything more.
But if we were to
Revenue
implement a
generation.
fee for this, it
You
would
can,
be.
you can have both. You can have a peddler's fee, peddler's license, and a fee to be a food truck.
Right.
Approved by ordinance.
All right, you're gonna bring this back to us? Okay, good. All right, any other questions for Amy before we move forward? Thank you. Harold? Mr. Hope?
Before we get to finance and tax, I mentioned you're in the process of putting together a fairly elaborate form for events anyway, in terms of coming through a central part of the city, working with Charles in terms of insurance, determining who wants to do what, so we can have a little more control over these events. Question to use city streets and so forth, and before it comes to you all, have all that information in a concise manner as we go forward.
That's good.
Unfortunately, right now it's about 15 pages, but honestly,
It's all in one place.
yes, it's all in one place.
I have space in it.
And it's gonna take this and Lisa has been dealing with this with Parks and Rec, and Mary Fawcett, we really got to get our hands around all this thing going forward. Burwell may be coming through our office and then going out to each department. We got police involved, we got public works involved, blocking streets, insurance requirements. It's more to it than sometimes than the person who's asking to do it don't realize what's all involved. So that's what we're trying to work through. All right, the last item I got tonight is we're talking about department reports, and Frank has promised me that finance and tax is all exciting and it's going to be very short.
Correct.
So,
Ready?
Yes.
Mayor said we have about 5 minutes.
Amy-
Maybe you won't spoil.
Amy made it a little bit longer than we expected, got back to.
We thank you for a chance to tell you what we do in collections on a daily basis, and Peggy's gonna talk about finance a little bit. Many times, the only interaction some of our citizens have with the city is when they walk through the front doors of the tax department. They're not always walking through because they're happy. They're paying a bill, they got an issue, they got a complaint. But we strive and try to do our best to at least make it a pleasant experience for them. So, and we do a large numbers. I want to take just a second to hear some of the numbers we deal with. The collection staff obviously receives all city revenues. When those revenues come in, they are assigned account codes to our revenue accounts on a daily basis. The total funds received that day are balanced, and a bank deposit is made the next day. Annually, that's in excess of $80 million. It's not a small operation. We have, I believe, 3 people full-time that work in our collection area. The tax department, we're one of the few cities that still are involved in tax billing. Of course, the county does the assessing of property. In July of each year, we bill out about 24,000 tax bills. During the month of August, the council has allowed over the years a 2% discount when you pay your taxes during that month of August. It's interesting, we collect about 66% of our taxes. Historically, cities did this to generate revenue early in the budget year. And it's for cash flow. A lot of places, as the revenues have tightened up, they've reduced the discount. The county did it last year, I believe, went to 1%. Maybe something we want to discuss in the future, I don't know.
Give a cash considered now.
Tax collection rate in any one given year, during the actual current year's taxes, exceeds about 98%. So a final 1 or 2% is the hardest to collect. Within the next year, we're usually above 99% collection rate. We work hard trying to collect delinquent taxes, and people are not always happy with some of the things you have to do when you collect your taxes. But we work hard, and our staff does a good job. Utility billing division bills out approximately 20,000 utility bills every month. When you do that, that means 20,000 payments have got to be received. They've got to be coded to the individual accounts, and those accounts balanced and deposited on a daily basis. In conjunction with utility billing, we have customer service division that deals daily with complaints, questions about their bills, anything that may happen. In the last few years, we've seen those questions from the public go up quite a bit. And I think a lot of it's because the other utility companies are no longer in town. We're easy to get to. Even though our bill is by far the smallest for the utility bill compared to a Duke, Power, Piedmont, or Cablevision, they're in here very quickly. Their bill fluctuates a few dollars. When we're receiving, billing out 20,000, that means our people have to read 20,000 meters a month. So when it's 5 degrees outside, 10 degrees, we're reading meters. We do that every month. And an interesting number that's increased a lot over the last few years is people moving within our city. We average between 600 and 700 a month. People coming in, establishing service, turning off service, and moving. And that doesn't mean it's new people all the time, but it's people moving within our corporate limits. And that means an actual visit to the site for each of those to get a meter reading, to turn on and turn off service. So these folks are a behind-the-scenes type operation. They're very, very important
with what we do and getting the revenues in that we need to operate the city. One thing that we're going to be working on quite diligently that we heard our citizens ask for is increasing our ability to accept credit card and debit card payments. Right now, we only accept bank drafts and online payments for utility bills. We hope and we're working to expand that hopefully in the next year. Taxes are still an issue and a problem. You can't discount your tax bill for the percentage that goes to a credit card company, if that makes sense to you. That's still there. You can do it through convenience fees. The county does it. We may be coming back to you with some ideas about doing that. They've done it on a sliding scale. The more your tax bill is, the more you pay a convenience fee. It gets pretty high.
Like an ATM fee.
Yeah, it gets pretty high. It's just not a flat fee. So we're working on that. We hope to bring you something back where we can offer that service because our people are asking for that, and we know we need to beef that up some.
So the 2% discount, that discount is the equivalent of how much money? Was it 52,000 or something?
2% is probably about a quarter of a million.
Less than that.
Now, it is on cash flow, but with rules and regulations in terms of reserves, that used to be cash flow included more than one quarter.
Jim, I would say to you that a lot of those payments are for mortgage companies that pay the property owners' tax bills that are in their mortgage. Whether they'll begin to slow play us a little bit and wait till December if there's not an incentive, I couldn't tell you. So whether that's what the net effect would be, I don't know. We get a lot of mortgage companies that do, even in this economy, take advantage of that discount. Anybody have any questions? I know it's not glamorous, but folks work hard, they do a good job, and they have some tough situations sometimes.
So we talked about going to the same reading system like Duval has, or Piedmont has, to ride by.
We have some radio reading meters in our system. We've done it initially on most heavily traveled streets, very dense developed apartment complexes, and any new development or any new project, we put radio in there and read it that way, rather than an upfront $3 or $4 million project. We tried to do it that way, and as developers develop, when it was really going strong, we required that they put in radio in to enhance that. Anybody has no questions, Ms. Reese wants to talk to you for a few minutes.
I have 30 seconds, so I'm going to go real fast. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. One of the things that I wanted to make you aware of that you might not be aware of is in the statutes are pre-audit requirements, and it has that on the checks have to be printed that this disbursement has been approved as required by the Local Government Budget and Fiscal Control Act. What that says is the finance officer has to, one, make sure that the amount is truly owed, and two, that either the funds have been encumbered through a PO, or that there are remaining funds, unencumbered funds, available to pay that bill. So, and if those acts are not performed, then I could have to personally pay for it out of my pocket. And I don't really have any extra change with $1 in college. Second child in college, I don't have any of those extra funds laying around, so we try to make sure that this is done. Up there you see all the different things that finance does, and if you ask a citizen of the city of Burlington what's the most important thing the city does, you're going to get police, fire, and garbage, sanitation, pickup, boom, boom, boom. And I'm here to proclaim that the most important thing that finance does is get the employees paid every 2 weeks. That everybody talks about being loyal and love where they work, but if something happens to their paycheck, you can better bet we're going to hear about it real quick. And you would hear about it real quick. And so we do our job so that you don't have to get those phone calls. Also, very important up there is ranking is getting our vendors paid. Everybody knows that the city pays very promptly, and we cut AP checks weekly. We process over 28,000 invoices over the year and POs. So that $80 million that Frank is taking in, we're spending out, and we're making sure that those funds are appropriately paid and accounted for. Part of also what we do is we handle the purchase orders, we request bids handle the bidding request for proposals. We make sure that if we're piggybacking, that we are following the state statutes for the piggybacking. We make sure that whoever we're piggybacking on, that they have followed all the proper procedures. They've had their public hearing or public notice and followed all the proper procedures for a request for proposal when we piggyback on that. So we make sure that we are following all the guidelines and statutes. We have to keep up with, of course, the current county pronouncements. Another big job of what we do is the employee insurances. The health, dental, life, accident, disability, and cancer. We make sure everybody gets signed up. We have enrollment meetings every year in May or June. And it's amazing. We tell people about things that are important, and you know, their wife might be pregnant, or you know, or they might be getting ready to adopt a child, but they don't hear us say every year that you need to sign up your child between 1 and 2 years of age to get them on the dental plan. And we say that every year, but then they'll call it when they have a baby. We try to say, hey, don't forget. We have constant reminders. You know, if a person has a claim that they have a situation that Blue Cross Blue Shield is told one thing, because when they call Blue Cross Blue Shield, the customer service rep is looking at thousands of plans. And we have remained self-insured. We have some particular controls in our plan that help us control costs that with Obamacare had gone for all the other plans. And so we have to call Blue Cross Blue Shield and say, hey, look, this person was told wrong. Please, make sure they know to tell them the right thing. So we do a lot of hand-holding for our employees. We implemented the physicals, which was a very good thing. We only had like 2 individuals who did not get their chose not to get their physical done. And an annual physical is a very good thing for catching any kind of potential disease on an early stage. That's where they are going. That really helps in controlling costs down the line. Property liability insurance. If, heavens forbid, a garbage truck or police vehicle hits a citizen's car or citizen's property, we take the information for that claim and are the liaison between our insurance company and the citizen who has the claim. We also try to stay on top of making sure if we're having an event somewhere on public property and alcohol is being served, that we have all the proper insurance documentations. Last but not least, your favorite subject, I'm sure, is budgets. Again, we have those $80 million budgets between the general fund of $50 million and water services fund of $23 to $25 million. And then there are over 25 other small funds, capital projects, special revenue funds that we handle the accounting for as well. If we're doing our job, and I hope we always are, Molly and Thomas don't want to talk to me because they're boring.
I always want to talk.
And and hopefully it will stay that way. The last thing I want to leave you with is I'm in the Leadership Alamance class right now with the Chamber of Commerce, and we had a government day. And one of the things that impressed me was everybody talked about how proud they were of their employees, and that's what I want to let you know about our group. We have a great group of employees. They work hard, making sure we're following all the statutes, because we have a lot of statutes to follow, and they really care about their job and their team players, and they're very grateful to be working for the city of Burlington.
Any questions? Questions or comments about the agenda for tomorrow night? Thanks for coming.
I try to get you a few more electronic devices.